Investigators recovered a large chunk of it, $733,000 in cash, when they seized 5 safes from his apartment.
A Connecticut man is accused of a cross-country scheme targeting DoorDash drivers in California. Stamford police tell CBS 2's Tony Aiello it delivered nearly $1 million.
The investigation started with a report of a domestic dispute involving a gun at this Stamford apartment building.
They were searching the apartment for the firearm and noticed several stacks of loose cash around the apartment, about 100 payment cards not in the suspect's name or in the victim's name, and a couple of fake IDs.
Investigator Vanessa Lynn says cops eventually found more than $700,000 stuffed in various lockboxes, alleged proceeds of a complex scam targeting DoorDash drivers in California.
You place an order on DoorDash, the driver's information comes up and there's a way to contact them.
Police say 21-year-old David Smith used technology to send text messages to drivers that appeared to come from DoorDash, then convinced drivers to submit login information to an official-looking but fake DoorDash support website, giving him access to drivers' accounts.
And then he would change the banking information that the DoorDash driver had on there for their direct deposits to a payment card that he had fraudulently obtained.
The arrest warrant says the scheme began in 2020 when Smith was just 18. In a statement, DoorDash calls this an egregious and appalling crime. We regularly remind drivers to keep their account information secure and share tips on how to avoid these type of attacks.
Police believe Smith targeted drivers all the way in California, thinking distance would make it harder to investigate the alleged fraud. 700 drivers lost money. The good news is much of that money was recovered, so they can expect at least partial restitution eventually. In Stamford, Tony Aiello, CBS 2 News.
Other news tonight, the former Stamford man who's accused of stealing almost $1 million in an elaborate DoorDash scam was shot to death Monday in New York. This came right before he was due in court in Stamford for a potential resolution in that case. News 12 Connecticut's Marissa Alter with the latest tonight.
David Smith was supposed to appear in Stamford Superior Court Wednesday morning to accept or reject a plea offer in his case. Instead, the state's attorney's office learned Smith was killed 2 days ago. New Rochelle police found David Smith shot several times in the chest Monday morning at the Heritage Homes complex. Police said a personal dispute led to the 22-year-old's death. They've since arrested 4 men in connection.
Community members did help with this, with calls to the police of the shots and descriptions of people running away.
Smith was living in Mount Vernon. He moved there after Stamford police arrested him in June 2023 in what one investigator called the most massive scheme he's seen. Smith is accused of scamming DoorDash drivers in California out of almost $1 million. Investigators recovered a large chunk of it, $733,000 in cash, when they seized 5 safes from his apartment. Police explained how the scam worked. They said Smith would use one of his many phones to place a fake DoorDash order in California. Then when the driver was on the way, Smith would impersonate DoorDash support and claim there was a problem with the order.
He would get them to click a link or go to a website, and then that essentially would turn over their credentials, their username and password to him. Once he was in control of that, he would change the billing information and steal any funds that they had for deliveries they had done, basically steal their paycheck.
More than 700 drivers were scammed over the course of 2.5 years. Police said Smith also stole the identities of dozens of people to open debit card accounts where he transferred the stolen money. Smith was considering a plea deal in the case at the time of his death. His decision to take the offer or go to trial had been expected at Wednesday's court hearing. The details of the deal weren't made public. As for the over $700,000 in cash that was seized in this case, Stamford police still have that money. What happens to it and whether it will go to all the victims as restitution will be determined at a hearing in March. That's also when the charges against Smith will officially be dismissed. In Stamford, Marissa Alter, News 12.
David Smith's attorney, Frank Riccio, says that he was shocked to learn of his client's death. He told News 12 that, quote, he was a quiet, kind young man who I had the pleasure of knowing. I feel terrible for his family. And he ends with, what a tragedy.